Hello, everybody. It's time for our Saturday briefing. It's December the 5th, 2020, and maybe I'll be the first. I want to wish you a very blessed and Merry Christmas. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving, and Lord willing, I'll be talking to you some during this month and personally wishing each of you here, at least in the NCR, a very blessed and Merry Christmas, especially our pastors, but I wish it to all of you. And so with this being Christmas and the last month of the year, I want to talk to us a little bit today. I've entitled today's briefing, Finishing Well, Always an Option. Finishing well, always an option. And if you're like me, we love these stories of late bloomers or people that finished well. Maybe you've heard of Harlan Sanders. He retired at age 65 and was bankrupt, had lost a business, and took his first Social Security check. He had a Social Security check and he had a recipe. And he put those two together, started a restaurant, started selling chicken with his secret recipe. And today, of course, we know him as Colonel Sanders, and died a wealthy man, an influential man. And of course, Colonel Sanders is a household name. We may not have known Harlan, but we sure know the Colonel. Here's another one that I ran across the other day. It's in a blog by Rohan Paul. And he writes about a lady named Anna Mary Robertson. And then her last name was Moses. We know her as Grandma Moses. Maybe you've heard of her. And Paul writes, and I quote, she was one of the most celebrated names in American fine arts and folk arts, and she didn't even pick up a brush until she was well into her late seventh decade. Grandma Moses was originally a big fan of embroidery, but once her arthritis got too painful for her to hold a needle, she decided to give painting a try. She was 76 when she cranked out her first canvas, and she lived another 25 years as a painter. Her works have been shown and sold in the United States and abroad and have been marketed on greeting cards and other merchandise. Moses's paintings are among the collection of many of our museums. The sugaring off picture was sold for $1.2 million in 2006. The sugaring off picture is the featured picture in the blog you'll see today. I looked at it not to disparage Grandma Moses in any way, but I'm not sure it's worth $1.2 million, but I am sure she finished well. And so this leads me to the issue that I want to talk to us today. No doubt about it, for all of us. 2020 is going to go down in history for the world, and for us in particular, for you in particular, I'm sure, is one of the most difficult years in history, and especially in recent history in our lifetime. And so truth be known, as we're wrapping up this year, as we come to the end of this incredibly tough year, our people need a win. We need a win. And so the good news is that finishing well is always an option. And if we can finish well in December, we can end up redeeming this entire year. Enter Christmas. A lot of times, if you're like me, my last church, I spent 20 Christmases, if I remember right, with those precious people. And after a while, Christmas is almost a burden as a pastor. I mean, how many ways can you preach on Christmas? How many ways can you make Christmas fresh and novel? And so it can be a bit of a challenge. But this year, I want you to see Christmas as a layup for us. This is a slam dunk. This is a way that we can finish well. Because you see, Christmas transcends 2020. All of us had a life well before 2020, and especially Christmas. Christmas memories go back far beyond 2020. If we can almost ignore the first 11 months of the year and focus on this month and finish well this month, it can transcend this horrible year that we've had to go through. Let me give you an example. This is not a Christmas memory, but it really highlights what I'm trying to illustrate for you. Sanja and I, when we got married, we went to Myrtle Beach for our honeymoon. And I won't go into all the detail there, but it was just a special time. We were kids. We were flat broke. My car broke down. I didn't have but $100 to my name. And my car broke down, and by the time I got through, within 48 hours, I was knocking on. We stayed in one of the members at the church where I was youth pastor there in Florence. They let us stay in their little cabin there at Myrtle Beach for free. And so we were staying there. I went and knocked on the door. There was somebody next door. My car was broke down. We had no food. I had just a few dollars. And so I was over there within 48 hours. I went there and I knocked on the door and I said, I'm not asking for myself. We're staying over there and we've had some trouble and we have no food in the house. Could you give me a little food for my wife? That's what I told them. And the lady of the house, they were an elderly couple, and she kind of chuckled, and they took good care of us and gave me some food. So within 48 hours, I was begging for food. But that was one of the most precious weeks of our life. We had enough money. We went out and ate one time at a Shoney's. We played putt-putt one time, and the rest of the time we had to depend on God, the charity of creation, and we just loved playing at the beach and just being together. I remember one time sitting out on the beach and this huge thunderstorm came in, and we just sat out there on the beach and watched. I guess we could have gotten hit by lightning, but when you're young, you're foolish. You don't think about those things. But here's the story. It just so happens that in the state of South Carolina, most years, we have a prayer conference every year, and most years we go to Myrtle Beach. It's just a good way for the ministers. The camp meeting is a lot for the laity, and prayer conference is more for the ministers and their families. And we'd always go down to Myrtle Beach. We go in January, but in South Carolina, January is not that bad. And every year, Sanja and I would go. And usually in the summer, we would always go down for a weekend. And every time we would go in light of our honeymoon. It was almost like salmons going back to where they were born. And we'd go back, and every time we'd go in January, and every time we'd go in the summer, then we started taking our family there. We'd have a family vacation there. And I could just give you so many memories, precious memories. But what happened is every one of them, every year, our honeymoon set the tone, and then every year we just add another layer. And so when you've been married as many years as us, when you go down there, every time you go, it's not just about enjoying that one experience, but all the other precious memories get piled on, and it just gets gooder and gooder, better and better, more meaningful and more meaningful. And that's how Christmas can be. So that's how Christmas can be this year. It can transcend 2020. And so I want you to use Christmas this year as good shepherds. I want to encourage you, as challenging as making Christmas fresh. I don't think our people is going to need fresh and novel this year. They just need an excuse to look at Christmas 2019, when the world was a lot different than it is now, and all the way back to their earliest memories. And so let's, as good shepherds, this is my mission today. As good shepherds, I want to encourage you to be more intentional than you've ever been to make sure this year's Christmas celebration is meaningful and significant. Use Christmas, which, remember, transcends 2020, to give your people a win so that they can end 2020 well on a positive note. And so this is December the 5th. We have 20 days until Christmas. Let's make it count. And so let me just run through a few ideas that I have for you today. And you probably have some great ideas, and I'd love for you to share them with me, and maybe I can share them in my conversation with other pastors. But here's a few. Number one, as I said, Christmas transcends 2020. Appeal to your people's Christmas past. Begin today. When you talk to them one-on-one, just ask them, tell me your What does Christmas mean to you? Give me your number one special Christmas memory. Talk to me about some of your Christmases. How does your family do Christmas? What are some of the family traditions? And begin to pull it out of them and and you probably know some of these, especially if you've been at your church for a while, but you'd be surprised at the family tradition and what Christmas means. Get them thinking about the good memories. And there will be some sad memories, of course, but even those sad memories might put 2020 in perspective. Wait a minute, I've gone through tough times before, and I've made it. Our family, we closed ranks and we got through it. And so even the sad memories, when you pull those stories out, when you appeal to their Christmas past, move them back before 2020. And life was going on. We've made it through all that. And that will pull out those good memories. And so appeal to your people's Christmas past. And then, Christmas transcends not only 2020, but Christmas transcends our lifetime. Maybe in some of your sermons, appeal to the faithfulness of God through the centuries. The fact that the Christian faith, the fact that we are still celebrating Christmas is a testimony to the tenacity and the veracity, I'll use a big word for you, but the truthfulness of our Christian belief. We've endured for 2,000 years now. The church has gone through plagues before. The church have gone through world wars. The church have gone through disasters. And we're still here. We're still celebrating the light and the darkness. We're still celebrating this great Christian heritage. I remember earlier this year when we were just getting our mind around. Matter of fact, it was the last message I preached for several months there, if I remember right. I preached for Pastor Heber, Pastor Jeff there in West Minot. And it was the Sunday, I believe, just before, at least in North Dakota and probably all the other states, they shut the churches down. So it was before Easter. And I preached and I walked them down memory lane in my own lifetime of tough times that I remember my parents talking about the Great Depression. I just started with my grandparents and my parents, and I walked through and I just began to enumerate just different things that my grandparents and my parents and then my life, and I began to enumerate those things. When I got through, I had several of the people come to me and said, that little section where you walked us down memory lane, that meant so much to us. And it reminded us that, God's been faithful. And so it gave perspective. When somebody is talking loud in the room and you got this splitting headache, that they are a nuisance to you. And that headache is just, it may be your mother, it may be your grandchild, it may be your loved one, special loved one. But because of that headache pounding you, it just taints everything else. And so we've been pounding on 2020. Remind them of their Christmas past and remind them of the church's Christmas past, all the way back to that first Christmas. It transcends. Give them some perspective. Let me give you a couple of hints. A good place to start is to research some familiar Christmas carols. You can just Google this, and I'll send you these notes, but Silent Night, World War I Christmas Truce in 1914. You've probably heard about it, but go back and read about it. It's a great story, and you can work that into maybe one of your sermons. Research I'll Be Home for Christmas. It's very touching. Oh, little town of Bethlehem. There's some great stories behind that. Just several, just Google Christmas carols and do a little research. And it transcends their lifetime. It puts things in perspective. Another hint is incorporate some Christmas stories, or maybe even as a part of each week, have somebody that's got a good narration voice, or you can do it yourself. Or if I'm talking to the men, a lot of times your wife, kind of like Gloria Gaither. If you've ever watched a Gaither homecoming video, when Gloria does one of her little recitations, that probably moves me more than the songs. It's sometimes a woman's voice, and maybe get your wife to read a Christmas story, like The Little Match Girl, Hans Christian Andersen, or The Gift of the Magi, just a precious story by O. Henry. Of course, The Christmas Carol, you can refer to it, or It's a little lengthy, but just some of the good Christmas stories. I remember my mother every year she got one of the magazines that she got when we were kids, Ladies' Home Journals, and like it might have been, and there was a story about Mrs. Claus, and every year my sister and I would sit down at her feet and she'd read us that story. It was a part of our Christmas tradition. When you refer back to those stories, it transcends 2020. So do a little research and remind them that the church has weathered many storms. Not only have they weathered many storms, but the church has weathered many storms, and we're going to weather this storm. We're going to finish 2020 well because of Christmas. Here's a third hint, or a third idea. Especially celebrate the traditions of your local church. This is a time to go back, and your church has them. They may be so much a part of what you do that you don't even think about it. And sometimes when we go in, we belittle church's traditions if we're not careful. We want to, we've bought into this idea that the old is bad and we need something new and we want to go forward. And you want old and bad. There's nothing wrong with growing and adding new things. But man, when you're in unfamiliar territory, sometimes what's familiar brings you comfort and peace. And so especially celebrate the traditions of your local church. Because every time you do, remember, like when Sanjay and I go to Myrtle Beach, it's not just going to Myrtle Beach, but we're taking all the other trips with us, and we're just layering all that on. So when you go and focus on some of your local traditions in your local church, you're giving your people permission to remember all the good times, all the good things. I don't know what it is. I know at Fort Mill, I remember two things. I'll give you one. One, we used to have homecoming, and they had this big homecoming. Well, they kind of got too sophisticated. Somewhere along the line, I don't know if it was a pastor or just the people, but they kind of got too sophisticated to have dinner on the ground. And homecoming, that was something that little churches did, or old people. I don't know what the mindset, but it was kind of scorned upon. But I could tell that the people, they remembered that with precious memories. And so I just repackaged it and called it Heritage Sunday. It was just homecoming, but we called it Heritage Sunday. And man, they jumped on board, and we had some great memories. Maybe this is a time for you to resurrect, just repackage it a little bit and resurrect some of the old traditions. And it will bring home to them all the precious memories. There was another one, though, a specific Christmas thing that we did at Fort Mill, and really all the churches. I don't know if we do it up here in the West, in the Northwest, but in the South, it's very common because a lot of the churches served what we call mill hills. They had the textile mills, and they had the mill village, and you'd have homes. They would literally provide home for their workers, and they would rent from the mill company, and then later they'd buy them. But anyway, so the people were poor. They didn't have a lot to have for Christmas, and so the church would provide a Christmas a fruit bag. It would be fruit, fresh fruit, which was a big deal. Maybe some nuts and some hard candy. And that was a big deal to those poor, struggling to make ends meet mill workers. And so the church did a little something for them. And so it became a tradition. Well, Fort Mill moved far beyond that. I mean, God blessed that church, and the people didn't need a fruit bag. But it brought back every year, it brought back precious memories. And I'd have maybe some people that didn't understand, and they would kind of ridicule, make fun of the fact that we're going to give a fruit bag and people can, buy pretty much anything they want. But I stayed true to it. I wouldn't let them cut it out, because it was a tradition that it wasn't about the fruit bag. It was about all the memories that went with that, all the precious memories. Matter of fact, the guy that headed that up, and David Ward Jr., if you happen to see this, God love you, man. But his grandfather started this back when the church was a little small, struggling church. Then his father took it over. And then David came along. David was one of the leaders in the church, served on my council, just a great guy. he took it on, and then he started passing it off to his son. David was a big Dallas fan, so he named his son Dallas. Go figure. But anyway, Dallas is a great guy. Hey, Dallas, if you happen to see this too. And so just that one family, what it meant to them, 4 generations. But and then he'd have a crew, and they'd always, they'd time it, see if they could beat their old record. And then I'd meet with them and take them all out to lunch. And we'd have a big celebration once a year. So it's just so much tradition and all that. Your church has those. Maybe you need to resurrect them, or you really need to highlight them this year, because it's not about, just like the fruit bag, it's not about the fruit bag. It's about all the memories that go into that fruit bag. It's not about the tradition so much. It's about all the memories way before 2020. You can finish well by putting 2020 in perspective of a lifetime or long history of your church. And it'll make 2020, which is so loud right now, it'll make 2020, wait a minute. We're going to get through this, and your people can finish well. Here's another thing. Maybe this is the year that you, as the pastor, add a new tradition. I call them Ebenezers. Remember where Samuel put up a pillow and he called it Ebenezer, which means the Lord has helped us up to this point. And you can just say, today we're going to start an Ebenezer tradition for Christmas, at least under my watch. If you don't want to do it later, the next pastor don't want to do it, that's fine. But start one. I don't know what it would be. Let me give you a personal one. This is my Christmas tie. I wore Christmas tie today. Just to celebrate the spirit of what this lesson's about. But it's far more than that. This is the Christmas tie that I started. I've had many Christmas ties over the years, and people give me Christmas ties, and I know they mean well. Hint, hint, probably to anybody, especially laity or anybody, giving your pastor a tie is probably not the best gift. I mean, they've probably got more ties than they know what to do with. And there's only so many Christmas days to wear a Christmas tie. And so honestly, I only wear this one. Very seldom do I ever wear another Christmas tie. Early on, a number of years ago, probably well over 20 now, I had a family move into my church, move into our town, and they started coming to our church. And I'm calling names here today, but this is Bob and Joyce Lang. Bob, I love you, my friend. Bob is really struggling with some physical issues right now, and so Bob, I'm rooting for you. I love you, friend, and I pray that you have a great Christmas. But they were at rock bottom financially, going through one of the most difficult times in their lives. And just what we do, what pastors do, and what our churches do, Fort Mill just embrace them and love them. We love them. And so come Christmas, they hadn't been there that long, and they're still trying to get back on their feet. Come Christmas, the people there were so good. We've just had tons of precious gifts under our tree every year from our people. They were so kind to us. And so I'm opening up presents on Christmas Day, and I get this little box from Bob Lang. And I said, what is this? I didn't expect a gift from them. I knew they were having it tough. He gave me, it was a used tie. It was his tie. That's all he could do that year. But he gave me this tie. And it's a beautiful tie, by the way. But it meant so much to me because I knew the sacrifice. It was like the water from the well of Bethlehem that some of David's soldiers went at the risk of their life, and he couldn't drink that water. He poured it out on the ground. And when I reach in the closet to pick out a Christmas tie, I can't hardly pick out another tie that I got at Ross for $5 on the bargain. This one is priceless. This is a tradition. And every time I put this tie on, it's not about a tie. It's not even about Christmas. It's about the sacrifice that went into it, all the memories. And every year, Bob would, at different events, and Bob would see it. We didn't talk about it every time, but I knew and he knew what it meant. Maybe this is the year. Some of you, this is your first Christmas with your people. Maybe you get up and tell them, you are now part of my family. I want to be a part of your family. This is our church family. And if you let me, I'm going to start a tradition. And I don't know what it is. It don't have to be anything special or phenomenal. It's the fact that you do it and that you do it with your people. This is a way to help transcend all the 11 months of bad news. This tradition can start you, can change the tone, and start you on a new trajectory, and you can finish well. So you start one. Another hint, new may be found in, or not another hint, but add a new tradition. Let me go back and refresh our memory. Remember, Christmas transcends 2020. So appeal to your people's Christmas past. But then Christmas transcends our lifetime. Appeal to the faithfulness of God through the centuries. You can study up on your history, your Christmas carols, Christmas stories, all those things, even beyond our lifetime. It just piles on and adds and shrinks 2020 down and puts it in its proper perspective. And then especially celebrate the traditions of your own local church. That'll mean so much to them. And then maybe you add a tradition. You start one. And some places to start new is sometimes to go back to the ancient history of the church. In the South, we had a strong element of Wesleyanism or Methodism and Baptists, very low church. They didn't have a lot of tradition and very simple, very Protestant. And so, but especially up here in the NCR, when you have such a strong, so many of our people come from a culture of Lutheranism and Catholicism and other high church liturgy and those kind of things are huge. And so maybe go back, research. Maybe you've never done this, but research. There's nothing wrong, nothing in the Church of God teachings that says you can't have liturgy. You do like I did at Fort Mill. That if I'd have got up and said we're going to celebrate Lent, they'd have run me out of town. But I had all these new people moving in from other parts of the country, and I just knew that people needed some rhythm. Our church needed a cycle of rhythm, so I started incorporating Lent. We called it 40 Days of Prayer and Fasting. And it was a huge hit. And other things that I did, I started those traditions to give meaning and rhythm to our church. And so maybe do a series on the Advent candles. If you're not familiar what that is, just research, just Google it, and you could do a series and light the candles and start a new tradition, or just start it for this year. Maybe if you've never done it, a candlelight service is huge. Here's a little hint. I did one year, and it got a little lengthy, and wax started dropping all over the carpet in the church. And our custodian, God love her, she didn't complain, but Angie Walker, God bless you, Angie. But she learned a secret. She said if you have to use an extension cord, but get a blow dryer and heat the wax and then put a piece of paper on it, the paper will suck the wax up right out of the carpet. But better yet, just get bigger candle wax catchers or whatever you call those things. But a candlelight service is special. A Christmas Eve service, especially include communion during that time. Brother Travis Hovde, I was talking to him about some ideas, and he's looking at even maybe on Christmas Eve, a schedule at letting families that still are leery about coming to church, but meeting with them and having a short candlelight service and serve them communion just all day long, that people schedule time to come. So there's different ways of doing that, but a Christmas Eve service and serving your people communion. Maybe it's just a simple, this is not the year, people can't meet as much, you haven't been able to do a lot of planning, but a simple nativity program, and especially let the kids do it. People, you can't mess up when they're watching their kids. They dress them up, just get a bathrobe and a stick and let them be shepherds. And you don't have to get all complicated. Just a simple nativity program. Because it's not going to be that nativity program. They're going to remember all the other nativity programs. I guarantee you some of their children were the baby Jesus back in the day. And maybe they were the baby Jesus. They're going to remember all those memories. Have fellowship events where possible. I don't know. The numbers are trending down a little bit, and so you have to be careful there. But include testimonies, intentional testimonies. After you've been interviewing your people, oh, that's a great story. Sister Jones, Brother Smith, would you share that story? And I want to give you 3 minutes in the service. They'll take 5, but that's okay. But let them share those testimonies. If you don't do this, or if you do, maybe do it more intentional. Decorate the church this year. When they come this Sunday, if you had time this Sunday, but at least by next Sunday, man, let it pop. They go, wow, it's just good news. You're finishing well. You know, all year long, it's just been doom and gloom and gray. But man, just let it pop. You know, exchange gifts. Maybe put a Christmas tree up, a nice Christmas tree. And I know some churches, I've heard of churches and pastors even that feel uncomfortable putting a Christmas tree in the church. I can respect that. I'm not going to argue with it. Maybe put it in the lobby. But if you're okay with this, put it just right down front. Let them see and exchange gifts, or get them to bring a gift for the nursing home. We're going to drop these off at the nursing home, or at the jail, or the prison, or just different ways. But decorate the church, exchange gifts, or bring gifts, and then drag it out. Drag it over into 2021. When you look back at the history of the Christian church and how we, looking at ancient history like Advent and candlelight services and all the tradition, well, January the 6th is Epiphany. And so you drag it all the way into the first of the year and research Epiphany. But that's when the wise men came, and that's some say that's when John the Baptist baptized Jesus. And so just drag it out. Have Christmas all the way. We're going to have, this is so good, we're going to have Christmas into January. We're going to go to January the 25th. I don't know. And buy yourself some more time to just capitalize on this layup that we call Christmas. Okay, man, I have rattled on long enough today. This is longer than I usually go. So let me summarize. 2020 will go down as one of the most difficult years in history, at least in recent history. Truth be known, as we come to the end of this incredibly tough year, our people need a win. We need a win. We've got one. It's called Christmas. Let's leverage it. Let's be more intentional than we've ever been to make this the best Christmas yet, so that we can run to win. I know I've been going for a while, but let me end with this. I've been thinking about this a lot. I don't know why, but on this whole thing of finishing well. Think about the two thieves on the cross. They were hanging on the cross. The Roman Empire was a brutal regime, and I understand that. But by the standards of their day, they were not. And some of our laws, a lot of our laws in the Western civilization in particular, are still based on the Roman law. These people were very serious about bringing order and structure and civilization. They did a lot of good. And so those thieves hanging on the cross, and our Lord hanging on the cross, they were being executed. They were not, this was not just the Roman Empire got ticked off and just flexing their muscles, rattling their sword a little bit to show who was boss. These men, somewhere along the way, these two thieves, they had gotten off the rails bad. And here they are, the ignominy of being hanging naked before the world, being crucified, being executed. And isn't it amazing the power of peer pressure? The Pharisees and the priests, they were down at the foot of the cross and mocking Jesus, and these two thieves joined in. But just a few breaths away from eternity, facing God, one of those thieves, maybe it was something that he observed, but one of those thieves changed course right at the end. A man that had disappointed everybody, a man that was an abject failure, that had wasted his life. Right at the end, he said, Jesus, remember me in paradise. Just like that, a few breaths away from eternity. He grabbed a straw. He clutched at a straw and salvaged his whole life. He finished well. Brothers and sisters, this has been a tough year. But this Christmas season is not about us ending the year feeling well. But this Christmas season is about being well. the eternal well-being of our people and of ourselves. And so let's finish well. Paul said, I have become all things to all men, that by all means I may save some. Let's run to win. God bless you. I love you. I look forward to talking to you over the next 20 days or so. And you're in my prayers. Let's finish well. God bless and Merry Christmas.